life, every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days.
Dancing in the intro. I love that, Nick. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Let's Talk Sports show, our Sunday show, reviewing all the games that have happened in the 1 a.m. or 1 p.m. slate. I'm all over the place today, man. My name is Ryan Larrison, your host. Work for Rotoballer, Fantasy Football for the People, WagMe Fantasy, and Basement Brood Fantasy Football. I'm joined today by none other than Nick Bodkins of the Bodkins Show. Nick, thank you for joining me today, brother.
Hey, I appreciate it. Jude's too busy celebrating that the Jets have a quarterback named Mike White, so I had to step in here and fill in for Mr. Jude Jets. I would say drink beer, but Jude is way too young to be drinking beer, so he's drinking whatever Jude drinks. I'm guessing it's a crap ton of Surge or Mountain Dew, whatever kids these days drink. He is out there celebrating big Jets win. Jets got a guy in Mike White. I mean, we can start there if you got some other place to start, but wherever you want to go, you're steering the ship, but you appreciate it, Jude. Celebrate the Jets win. I
love it. I mean, we kind of had to break the spell, right? Because I felt like him having to come on and talk about the Jets after a loss and everything. Let's break the curse. Maybe it's me, because not that I'm a Jets fan, but I've been hyping them up a lot this year. Not only because of Dan and Jude, but I think that they've shown that they can be a really good team. They're just a quarterback away, and they just figured it out because Mike White is he's going to be their starter moving forward. And I don't think Zach Wilson's coming back. But before we get into that, we have a giveaway going on over at Let's Talk Sports. I think he's got it's running all the way to Christmas. You get your choice of a jersey is one of the prizes, $100 and is one of the prizes, and then a Let's Talk Sports shirt and mug. Way that you enter, you have to go follow I guess it is following. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Let's Talk Sports YouTube channel. Also, subscribing to either Nick's channel or the Whiskey Sports podcast run by Tanner of Sports Buffoons. That gets you another entry into it. And then commenting on any of the videos that happens, having any of your comments on there, you're also entered into it. So, Nick, I think we're disqualified because we could just sit here and spam the comments as we talk to each other if we wanted to get some entries, but we'll disqualify ourselves from that. Runs all the way to Christmas, guys, so go ahead and do that. And I think that's the only thing that we really have to announce, other than using Owner's Box and Underdog. Use the code LTS. You get a $500 match on your first deposit, up to $500, I should say. So go ahead and use that. That helps out not only Dan, but Let's Talk Sports in a big way. And we'll just head right into the Jets game because Jude's on here. Let's go, Jets. Jude, I mean, I think I can speak for everybody when I say I called this because I said at the beginning of the season when Joe Flacco had to start that it should have been Mike White. And this is exactly why it should have been Mike White. He gives that team a spark. I know he kind of, fell off a little bit last year when he was starting a couple of games consecutively. But, last year he had that 5 touchdown game. That shows you right there that he's got the ability to just, lead a team, put it on his back. He can make the passing game work in New York. And, missing Breece Hall, Michael Carter went out today with an ankle sprain. They needed to put the game on his back, and he took him. He carried him to a 31-10 win. I understand that Trevor Siemian had to start for Chicago, and that's kind of a letdown for Chicago fans who have,
Actually, I thought it was Nathan Peterman. Peterman, I thought, started, right?
So there's the funny story about that. And this was great because my work chat for Rotoballer was going absolutely bonkers because we're trying to get the news out there of who's actually starting between these guys. And Siemian hurts his oblique. I think that's what they said it was, his midsection oblique.
Yeah, that's the update I got on this morning show. Yeah, I was like, hey, I got an announcement to make on the morning show. I thought Trevor Siemian start. So Trevor Siemian didn't start.
He did start. Peterman was slated to start afterwards, and then they bring Siemian back in to start warming up right before the game starts. He throws like 3 or 4 balls on the sideline, and they say, all right, you're good to go. That's how scared they were to play Nathan Peterman. They had David Montgomery as the emergency backup quarterback. Peterman was active, but I hesitate to say that if Siemian did go down, they wouldn't have thrown Montgomery out there to see what they had in Montgomery at quarterback. So he did play. Only threw for 179 yards, a touchdown, had an interception. He ran the ball a bunch, which doesn't make any sense to me because he had that oblique injury. but they leaned on Montgomery for most of the game, and their offense was kind of shut down. Jets defense looked really good today. But yeah, the big story is obviously Mike White, man. Mike White, Jude's commenting in here. Mike White is that guy. 22 for 28, 315, 3 touchdowns. He balled out today, and he's 100% right.
When was the last time Zach Wilson had that kind of stat line? College is BYU days, high school maybe. Mike White he's balled out, like Jude said. Let me ask you this, Ryan. If the Jets, let's say they moved to 7-4 today, yep, and they look like that defense looks like a playoff defense, right? Like I think we can agree on that. But let's just say they were below 500. Do they still make the change from Zach Wilson to Mike White, or do they think, hey, we're still building or rebuilding, we're going to go with Zach Wilson? Or is it because, like, hey, we got a chance, surprisingly, to make the playoffs. Everybody in this locker room deserves to make the playoffs. Let's put Mike White in, because it seems like to me, this wasn't just a coaching change that wanted this. It seemed like the players in that locker room wanted this change. They're the ones that wanted Mike White and get this punk kid crybaby out of here, because he can't control the locker room or doesn't have the respect to the locker room.
Well, you nailed it. I don't think it matters what they could have been winless at this point, and I think they still would have benched Zach Wilson because he lost the locker room. There was a report that came out, I think it was from Rich Stamini right before the game, that Wilson had lost all confidence in himself and the team had lost all confidence in Zach Wilson. You don't get reports like that in the NFL. The last time we had a report like that was when Sam Darnold was the quarterback and he was seeing ghosts and he was having a problem when he was a Jet, and he just won today for Carolina against Denver. So this is an issue with Zach Wilson. They need, like you said, this defense is a playoff defense. They have the ability to where they're one of the few teams in the league that they can win a game off of their defense. There's not a lot of defenses in the league like that. So they wanted to give them the chance. I think the reason that they went with Mike White over Flacco, because there was people, before this week that said, why aren't we putting Flacco in there? Why aren't we going with Flacco? Why not give Mike White the chance? Obviously, he's shown them something in practice. Flacco looked okay for his first few games, but I don't think they won very many. I think they won one of their first 3 or 4.
They won the crazy Browns game. Remember that?
Yep.
They were down like by 20 against the Browns, and like 80,000 things had to happen, and all 80 things happened, and they won that game. That was it.
And whenever Flacco's in, they throw the ball like 50-something times because for some reason they just find a way to be down by so much that they have to rely on old man Flacco to throw 50 times. That's not what you want to do. 22 for 28. That's exactly what you want your quarterback to do. He found a way to be super efficient. 315, 3 touchdowns. I understand it's against Chicago. Chicago's defense
against the lousy Bears defense, which that's what's crazy to say, because it's my 35 years of walking this earth. Like the Bears have always, even in their bad years, have always had a pretty good defense, and this is probably their worst defense. So it was a right time to start Mike White because they were playing who they were playing, and now he gets the momentum, and then that team's just got that locker room ready to or is rallying around him. You've seen it in different places, right? Washington is rallying around Taylor Heineke. Like you can say, like, you look at that team. What was Carson Wentz doing starting this, the first few weeks? Now we're saying that now about Mike White. Like, this team is rallying around him. It seems like the Vikings rally around Kirk Cousins and everything that they do. Like, it's like, oh, everybody wants to trash the guy in the media. We're rallying around him, except for Zach Wilson, who everybody's trashing right now. So including the guys in the locker room. But it just seems like they're getting rallied around Mike White.
Yeah, and the big thing is too, the momentum that he's going to carry from this game into the next is huge, because now they play Minnesota in Minnesota next week. Massive game. And then they go and they play at Buffalo. And we got some comments from the Godfather himself of Let's Talk Sports, Dan. He says, let me answer this. If they win one more of the next 2, there's no change at quarterback, which I think he's right. I don't think they go back to Zach Wilson after this. Even if they lose these next 2 games, I don't think Zach Wilson comes back. And Jude added, White moved up the depth chart during the season. He started off the season as a QB3. Week 8 became the number 2, which that is right. They started to bench Flacco, and now he's the number 1. And Dan chimes in. He just says, hey, guys, just wanted to say thanks for holding down the fort. There are no limits on hosts entering as very much as you want as part of the community. I appreciate that, Dan. We're holding it down for you. I hope we're doing a good enough job. We miss you. But huge win, man. I feel great for you and Jude because this Jets team looks like we've talked about. They look like a playoff team. I think that they're going to make the playoffs if they can continue. The big thing is these next 2 weeks. If they lose these next 2 weeks, do they still make the playoffs where the remaining schedule is Detroit, Jacksonville, Seattle, and Miami? I
Those
think
are
that they
winnable.
can win all. Maybe Miami's
Maybe
going
not
to be tough.
Miami. Yeah, Miami be tough, especially if Miami's maybe playing for still playing for, maybe that first round bye, maybe playing for the division as well. Let's look. I'm gonna pull up look at the standings real quick. So, I mean, it's 7-4 right now. I know some of the games yet to be played. They're the 7th seed. You look at the Chargers are right there at 5-5. If they lose let's just say they lose the next 2, they'd be 7-6, and then you're entering Indy territory. Jacksonville's got 7 losses as well. Even the Browns. So, so they would still kind of be right there. I mean, with the Patriots and Chargers kind of floating in that last spot. So, it is. I mean, Juice kind of saying it here. All games are winnable. To be honest, they did already beat the Bills, and the Vikings. It just depends on if that game's on prime time or not. So
Hey, Kirk smashed that this week. He had the primetime game and he smashed it this week.
He got a little help from the refs there, I think, on that Hunter Henry touchdown, but that's just from my old 4 eyes here that I thought Henry got in.
And he's not wrong. The big thing I think moving forward is just going to be the run game. If it's a high ankle sprain for Michael Carter, he's going to be out probably 4 weeks at the very least. That's a big blow to this team because now James Robinson was a healthy scratch today. I don't understand what's going on there. And then you've got Ty Johnson, who looked pretty good. He had a really nice stat line, but again, this is Chicago we're talking about. Chicago can't stop a nosebleed, so it's tough to. That's the only question I have right now is what do you do with the run game? Can you still run the ball consistently? Because I think if you have to put it all on Mike White in some of these big game situations, you're gonna have some struggles, moving forward. But I like their chances. I think they're gonna make the playoffs. Chicago, sorry, it's good for you guys though. You want to lose games right now because you want that higher draft pick. So we can end the Chicago conversation on that, I think, because there's not much more to talk about.
I do want to point out the Jets are their point differential is plus 34, which is about 6 in the AFC. So it shows you that they, they're keeping games close, but they're not turning the ball over. They're, so that's plus 34. I mean, Miami, who is 5-1 and 5 are 8-3, they're plus 26. So that just kind of shows you that, but they did get blown out in those 3 games that they did lose. So the Jets, even in their losses, have been close.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. You look at team. There was a stat that went out about Minnesota and Jacksonville in terms of like the closeness of their wins and losses. It's about the same, and Jacksonville is the one that's got the crappy record right now, even though they won today, which we could talk about that game a little bit later. But I want to dive into the Cleveland-Tampa Bay game because Cleveland goes into overtime and upsets Tom Brady and the Bucks. I know you had a lot to say about this game and Mr. Old Man Brady, so I'm going to give you the floor to open up and talk about how bad the Bucks looked in this game, and then I'll go in after you.
Man, I mean, it's 17-7. The Bucks, do they just look at their division first of all and be like, you know what, we can win this thing with a losing record so we can take some games off? And Tom Brady looks old. I mean, I told you this before we went live. I said, Tom Brady looks old. I said, I don't know who's worse right now. Who's playing worse, Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady? At least Aaron can blame the broken thumb and then some. What's Tom blaming it on? Because he has, give me the weapons that the Bucks have compared to what the Packers have. And the Bucks are still losing games. Some of it is, their defense. They just let Amari Cooper catch one wide open. How are they only scoring 17 points? I mean, every week there's their games. You look at their games, they barely score 20 points. And you look at their weapons. You have Mike Evans, you have Chris Godwin, you have Russell Gage, you have Julio, you have the Cameron Brate. Like those the tight ends aren't bad. And then you have the running backs. White's a good running back. Lenny is, he's old, fat, and can't run much, but he can catch the ball. And he can still score a couple touchdowns here and there, but Brady looks just bad. He should have I mean, who would have thought a Tom Brady team would be below 500 at this point in the season? I think he literally, I was on a show and somebody said Tom Brady's just trying to win the Super Bowl with a losing record so he can add that to his ring record. I mean, I believe that's what they're trying to do.
I
Because
mean, it's not wrong, man. It sounds like because you look at the stats for all these players. Godwin looks great. He had over 100 yards and a touchdown. Rashad White coming in and playing for Leonard Fournette. You know, he didn't look too bad. 64 yards, caught 9 of his 9 targets. Like, you know, Brady 246 and 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. But the big thing is he's not making these clutch plays like you're used to seeing Tom Brady make, right? They're able to make it go into overtime, but the Browns defense was banged up today. They were missing some key pieces, and they still find a way to lose in overtime. You expect Brady to be able to make that happen, but he didn't have the Brady magic that we're all used to seeing.
There was a throw in overtime that really first of all, it was one-on-one with Mike Evans on the outside, and Brady just overthrows him. I mean, I've seen Brady for the last 20 years put that in a bucket, game over, right? Like, I mean, just puts it right where it needs to be. Had to be a perfect throw. Couldn't make that perfect throw today. And I mean, the offensive line did get, and then what are they doing? It's 3rd down. Tristan Wirfs gets hurt. And then they don't double team Myles Garrett. I don't know. Maybe that's something you should do. One of the best pass rushers in the league. You know what? We're just going to let a guy that we just brought in off the bench and let him go one-on-one with the best defensive end in the league. One of the best defensive league. Guess what happens? Oh, Tom Brady gets sacked. Who would have thought? Because Tom Brady's 45 years old, runs slower than stink on shit, and we're going to go one-on-one. And maybe Tom Brady can pick it up with his legs. Are you kidding me? I mean, Brian Leftwich or somebody's going to get fired there in Tampa Bay. If I would have told you this, here we are at week 12 and the 5-7 Atlanta Falcons are right there win this division. Hell, even the New Orleans, they win today, can win this division. The Carolina Panthers, who are starting an XFL quarterback who's hurt, and now they're starting Sam Darnold, and they get a win, and they're still in this thing. I mean, this division's wide open, and it's all because Tampa Bay is just allowing everybody to keep playing.
You know, everybody used to clown the NFC East for being the worst division in football, and I don't remember the NFC East ever being as bad as what this division looks like right now.
It's awful. I mean, both Souths, right? The AFC South is bad. NFC South even worse. Like, I mean, I feel like there's that Billy Bean from Moneyball where there's shit, and then there's lower, then there's stuff underneath shit, and then there's us. That's the AFC South right now.
Yeah, and the thing is too, you know, the defense I think has been okay. They've let up more than 20 points only twice since week 5. Like, you got to be able to capitalize on that if you're Tom Brady. You've got Mike Evans, you've got Chris Godwin, you've got Julio Jones, you've got Fournette. I understand the offensive line is beat up, but man, this is well, I'm going to say this and he's going to win the Super Bowl, but this is the decline that everyone's kind of been predicting the past 3-4 years. You know, it's happening before our eyes. And now everyone's too afraid to say it because he's going to come out and he's going to win a Super Bowl the minute that we do. But I fully believe it. They've got to go out. They've still got to play New Orleans next week in a division matchup, at San Francisco, Cincinnati, Arizona, who's starting to look a little bit better now that they're getting healthier, Carolina, then Atlanta, two division matchups at the end of the year.
So, I mean, they could.
It's in the air.
I think they would. I would pick them to lose against Cincinnati.
Yep.
The 49ers.
Yep. Yeah, especially in San Francisco.
Yeah, I would pick them to lose that. I mean, and the rest of the games are legit toss-ups, right? Because, I mean, they just shown today we can lose to the Browns, and then they could just lose to Atlanta. They could lose both games. You said they play the Saints twice?
Saints, no, and then they play Carolina. Atlanta
so
at the end of the year.
They got their division, and they could go 0-3 in those games. How bad they've played, and just depending on who shows up, because Atlanta is one of those teams too that decides to show up about every other week, and that seems. I thought the Bucks. I thought the Bucks. I had them in a bunch of parlays because I was like, it's the Bucks. They look like after that Rams win, they're getting some momentum. They're coming off a bye. They're going to put it to the Browns. Browns are looking forward to Deshaun back, and nope. The Browns, how do you only score 17 points? That's in today's NFL. It's sad.
Yeah. So now, what do you think the Browns look like now? Because obviously they're gonna switch to Deshaun Watson. Brissett, hand clap to you. What are you gonna do next year? I think he's only on a 1-year contract. I don't think he signed a multi-year deal to be the backup there. He's gonna try and go get his money somewhere else because I think he's kind of earned himself to either be the elite backup of a team moving forward going into next season, or maybe he's a bridge quarterback for a team that can't find a way to make the quarterback situation work. And I think he
Jets,
deserves
I
it.
mean, a team like the Jets would be perfect. I asked, we had Italy Jet on this morning's show. I mean, it seems like if they're not going to move past on with Zach Wilson, they got to bring a veteran guy, Jacoby, a Jimmy G. If Jimmy G goes there, he'd be the starter. But Jacoby Brissett, that's somebody that they would battle with in camp with.
Yeah, and obviously the big one is going to be Lamar Jackson. The Jets have been rumored with Lamar Jackson for the past year because he hasn't signed his contract. But hey, maybe Mike White's the guy. Maybe we might just be disrespecting a future Hall of Famer, Nick. All right, we gotta slow our roll.
I don't know about that, but I mean, maybe he is the guy that's going to lead them the rest of the way.
And Fan University podcast as that Jacoby is going nowhere, and if the Browns are smart, they keep him there, because he's an elite backup who I think can be a starter for you. They've only got 4 wins. Let's not go crazy, but this is the Cleveland Browns we're talking about, who have been ravaged with injuries and has been kind of a dumpster fire of an organization for years and years and years. So I think he's done a pretty admirable job. But watching Deshaun Watson next week is going to be interesting.
And I'm interested to see it. And who knows if Massage Watson can keep his, hands to himself for how long that will happen. If any other reports come and happen, you could see another, lengthy suspension or maybe even just out the league.
Yeah, and that's something that you got to watch for. My big thing is he looked like dog water when he was in the preseason. There wasn't a worse quarterback I watched in all preseason, and that's saying something with some of the guys that I had to watch for work. So I'm interested to see how he looks, because I think that honestly Brissett has played himself into some starts, but they're not going to trade away their entire future to not play Deshaun Watson when he's back. So obviously we'll see him next week. Let's move on. Jacksonville upsets Baltimore 28-27. They lose Travis Etienne early on in the game to a foot injury. I think it's on the same foot that he had the Liz Frank injury last year. And then the Liz Frank injury he had before, and then he had the ACL tear. But they just lean on JaMychal Hasty, who had a really good game.
Zay
Jones. I pick up Zay Jones in almost every league, I feel like every week, because he's like spot start guy. You can start him whenever. And of course, I don't start him this week because I feel like I got my lineup all set. He goes off for like 20-something points on my bench. But yeah, Zay Jones has a massive gain, 145 receiving yards, no touchdowns. He's got a 2-point conversion. Lawrence looked fantastic in this game. Picked apart the Baltimore defense.
That might have been the best Trevor Lawrence. I haven't watched a whole lot of Jags game, but I caught the end of that game. That might have been the best Trevor Lawrence I've seen since Clemson Alabama national title game. Like, I mean, the kid was a huge step in the progression of where he's going.
Well, and they couldn't lean on the run game heavily in this one. They ran the ball only, 17 times, which usually they're in the plus 25 territory, close to 30 with all their guys combined. But they leaned on Trevor Lawrence in this game, and it worked out to he spread the ball around. I think that was most important. He had a tendency at the start of this season to really hyper target Christian Kirk, which was great for Kirk for fantasy purposes when you're talking about it like that. But the offense wasn't working the way that it was supposed to. Now he's spreading the ball around to guys like Zay Jones. Marvin Jones catches the game-winning touchdown on a great, beautiful pass and a great toe
I thought he was
tap.
out of bounds. I thought he was out.
Good. Such a good toe tap on that review. Like, we shouldn't be doing nail biters for Jacksonville games, but I feel good for him because I really like Trevor Lawrence. I think he got the short end of the stick last year. A lot of people counted him out this year. Jacksonville still has a chance to win this division. We were talking about it before. Tennessee goes down today. They lose their game to Cincinnati. Indianapolis Colts are a shell of them former selves, in my opinion. They don't look anywhere near remotely close.
They got a little bit of fight lately since Saturday's come back, but Hey Ryan, here's one. I found something. I found one of Doug Peterson's nuts somehow. I mean, the nuts on that guy to go for two to win the game. Somehow it got delivered to my house, but that's the size of them. So imagine what the other one looks like, because you got to have, I mean, the big old nuts on Doug Peterson to go for two, go for the win, give it up for Jacksonville, baby, because man, I mean, absolutely the call, the plays. I mean, why not go for two? That's what originally it looked like they were going to put the kill gear. I said, what do you got to lose if you're Jacksonville? I mean,
You
another
don't.
game. What's another loss, right?
You don't have anything to lose, and they at the end of that game could not stop Baltimore's offense. You know, they had them shut down pretty well, I think, in the first half. I don't even think they went in double digits by the time halftime started. I think they were at 9 points. And Baltimore just kind of came out in the second half, hair on fire a bit. You know, people were panicking. Lamar Jackson's having a terrible game, and then he kind of bounces back, goes for almost 100 yards on the ground. But I mean, I think, talking back about the playoffs and my love for Doug Peterson and his giant nuts that got delivered to your house, my homer love for him as a former head coach of the Eagles, our Super Bowl winning coach, I think this team has what it takes to make a wild card spot if they can continue to win. Here's the issue. You look at their remaining schedule. They got some winnable games. Detroit next week. Detroit's got a lot of fight in them, but that's a winnable game.
Winnable game. I mean, both teams riding high, I feel like, even though the Lions lost, I mean, to the Bills, it was a dogfight game. They won the previous two games. So that's, I mean, both teams' momentum's at an all-time high.
They might have 80 combined points in that game. Just going tap for tap with touchdowns. Tennessee at Tennessee the week after. That's the big one. They can win next week, and then they go and they knock off Tennessee. They gain a division win, knock off the leader of the division, give them another loss, keep that thing really tight. Then they play Dallas, which I don't know
Dallas,
if they're going to be able
Dallas
to
looks like one of the best teams in the league right now.
Yeah, it's tough. I think offensively they might be able to kind of hang with them, but I don't think they could do it defensively. I don't think they'd be able to stop the offense enough. Then they play the Jets, really tough defense. Houston after that, that's a winnable game. And then they end the season against Tennessee. So if they could string some wins together and then make that final game a playoff game, essentially, to get into the playoffs, I think they have a chance. But
that Jets game would be a huge game because both teams, if let's just say the Jags rattle off those wins, that could be the team that, winner of that game sneaks into the playoffs, and, losers out. Like if that's, that game.
And that's in week 16. There's only 2 games after that, and
Yeah.
one of them is extremely winnable against Houston, but it could be an upset game, and then that final game against Tennessee. I like it. I think they have a chance. Baltimore's fine. They go to 7-4. I think they're still atop there, or they tied
for first
Cincinnati.
With Cincinnati, who beat Tennessee today in a great game.
And it was a fantastic game. Not one of those high scoring affairs that you're used to seeing with the Joe Burrow led offense, but really back and forth. I mean, Baltimore's got winnable games on their schedule. They got Denver next week, who just got shellacked by Carolina. We won't even talk about that game because
I do want to mention. I do want to the Denver. Did you see the defense attack? I mean, Russ's own teammates hate him. I mean, they're yelling at him on the sideline. I thought his own teammate was going to punch him in the face. I mean, Russ does have a punchable face. So I mean, that's the only highlight you ever need to talk about that game.
I think at one point I saw it was going into like mid-second quarter and Russell Wilson had 10 passing yards, something crazy like that. Like, I don't know what happened to the guy. Biggest miss of the fantasy season was Russell Wilson for me, because I had him in so many leagues as a later round quarterback, because he was going, around that double-digit turn there, and it's like, oh my God, it's Russell Wilson. He's got weapons galore. It's got to work out, right? Way.
You at least get to take solace knowing that you weren't the only guy. Everybody was high on Russ and that Denver offense. So I don't know. I don't know whose fault it is. I don't know if it's a Russ thing. I don't know if it's a Hackett thing. I don't know if it's whose fault it is, but Hackett will probably he'll be the sacrificial lamb in the firing, because they paid Russ all that money. And made all them picks, so they're stuck with him. They'll probably, maybe Hackett's a one and done, and they try to bring somebody else to fix that offense or fix that team.
They're gonna have to. I've watched quite a few of their games, and to be honest, it's so hard to figure out. Is it Russ? Is it the play calling? The play calling is poor. It's so bad. The offense is about as basic as it gets. They have no run game without Javonte Williams. I mean, I understand that Latavius Murray had a good stat line today, but in the context of an actual football game, instead of just reading a box score, not really that impressive. The run offense doesn't work. And when you don't have the ability to go to an RPO style with Russell Wilson and make it a believable threat, you can't do anything with him because he's shown what his weaknesses are at this point now. He can't be that pocket passing quarterback. He wants to cook so bad, and he's burning popcorn on the stove, for Christ's sakes. Like he can't do this the way that he thinks that he can do it. And now he's losing the locker room. Like that team got fleeced on one of the worst trades. It's going to go down as one of the worst trades ever. Seattle absolutely fleeced them, and now they're going to go into next season with so many questions. Nobody's going to want to come to Denver in terms of free agency. If you're a Broncos fan, I sorely apologize to you because you're not going to have any good things going your way.
It seems like it's to me, and this is what I'm going to say. I think it's a Russ thing more than a Hackett thing, because to me, his teammates are his teammates are starting. We talked about, the Jets literally benched a guy, and Zach Wilson, because his teammates said, get him the F out.
Yeah.
It seems like Denver is to that point with Russ. I
don't know what you do.
That's what it seems. Yeah, I don't know either.
You can't bench him, right? You've traded everything.
You can't bench. They're stuck with him. They're stuck.
It's going to go down. That deal in terms of money and contract, there's a good chance it goes down way worse than what Deshaun Watson's getting paid. Because if Watson can play and he actually looks competent, that's going to kind of wash over how much money he got and how much capital they gave up to get him. But Russell Wilson looks about as cooked as possible. And I don't know how he comes back from it. Like you said, the sacrificial lamb is going to be Hackett. But who do you bring in? Like, who do you bring in to change that? Because I don't think you're going to be able to bring anybody in to change it.
So, they obviously got, the owner's got a lot of money. Do you just go to, you call Sean Payton and say, what does it take for you to come to Denver?
Does he want any part of that dumpster fire?
But they got the weapons, right? Like, that's the thing is you look at that team, you say the dumpster fire, but when he went to New Orleans, that was even a bigger dumpster fire. They didn't even have a home for over a year. And they were the Aints, and then they got Drew Brees, at the same time. If I'm the owner of Denver, first of all, I inherited this bum and all this stuff. And I forked out billions of dollars for this team. I'm stuck with Russ, so I'm going to have to fire Hackett. Hackett can come back to Green Bay because for some reason our offense looks worse without him and he looks worse without us. So maybe that was a marriage, that should have never, divorce that shouldn't have happened. And then you go, you bring in Sean Payton. Say, Sean, what's it going to take for you to come to us? I guess you really got to call the Saints because I think the Saints own his rights. So either way, whatever it takes, maybe bring in Sean Payton's the name that I think of.
Yeah, because you had all the offseason chatter of Peyton wants to go to Miami. That's not happening. There's no way that happens now with how good McDaniel has been able to lead that team. So,
Dallas was the other option, I think, maybe for him because him and Jerry are boys.
And I don't think you fire McCarthy after this year, right? He still makes those stupid boneheaded mistakes. They're one of the most penalized teams in the league.
He always will. He always will.
He will. He always will. But Jerry's not going to have, if he's not going to find a way to sit Zeke when Pollard's the better back because of a contract, overpay for Dak, like he said in his own words. He said, I overpaid you. Like, he's not going to fire Mike McCarthy. He had years and years of Jason Garrett going friggin' 7-9 and 8-8.
That's true.
He's not going to fire him. So maybe he does end up there. But I got to think there's a better opportunity for Peyton to, go out and have a potential Super Bowl winning team than what Denver has been able to produce. But maybe he's going to be the whisperer for Russell Wilson, but we'll have to see. Let's talk about the Tennessee game. The Tennessee game was fantastic. They go down to 7-4. Cincinnati goes up to 7-4, 20-16. T. Higgins has a huge game. He was kind of quiet for that first half. And then once they really needed to, drive down the field and get some points on the board, They rely on him. 7 for 114 and a touchdown. Rest of the wide receivers did absolutely nothing in this game. So this was all T. Higgins and Hayden Hurst.
Hayden Hurst.
Yeah.
I mean, it seemed like I was watching that game. It seemed like Joe Burrow. I mean, he put some balls in a bucket especially on the game-winning drive to T. Higgins. And then when he got in trouble, it seems like he's still taking a lot of sacks, but when he's getting out, he's scrambling. He finds Hayden Hurst as his safety net. I mean, Ryan, where were you at with Hayden Hurst as number 2 tight end or something like that in fantasy rankings? I don't know if that's what he is, but by God, I feel like it.
He's easily a top 12 guy. He, every single week I rank him inside the top 12. And, obviously all tight ends have those weeks where they catch 2 balls for 15 yards. But there's few that get the type of target share that he gets now. When Jamar Chase is back, we're going to see how that goes. But over the past month, he's had a great target share, and that's the only thing you can really latch on to if you don't have a tight end that's named Travis Kelce for fantasy. So I think he's going to be usable for the rest of the season. You can auto start him basically no matter the matchup. But they were even talking about during the game how he basically just lost his love for football while he was in Atlanta. Big shocker there. Yeah. But now he's back in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow kind of wanted him in during the offseason to bring him in once they lost Uzomah to the Jets. And they just
upgraded. It looks like such an upgrade. Oh, yeah. I mean, to me,
Uzomah's always just been a home run hitter tight end. He's the big play guy, and he can block really well. But he's not that I can consistently check the ball down to him. That's exactly what Hayden Hurst is able to do. He's got great hands. I love the pairing of those two. I think they're going to go down and be a very good quarterback tight end duo, next few years into the foreseeable future. I always liked Hurst. He just got overshadowed by Mark Andrews in Baltimore, and then he goes to Atlanta for one season. He has the starting role. And then
had a decent year. Yeah, then they drafted Pitts. Well, I mean, if I had a pretty decent year one year, and then my team drafts my replacement, I'm probably going to lose my love for football too. And I'm playing on a shitty team. I'd probably really love playing with Joe Burrow and like, hey, we got a team here. Cincinnati, that's their 3rd win in a row, though. Cincinnati's that team that's catching hot, just like they did last year at this time. Watch out for the Bengals. Their offensive line is improving. They got their defense still very underrated. I know Eli Apple, their secondary is kind of questionable.
He made a good play today. He made a good play on Treylon Burks where I was like, oh, he's going to house this as soon as he threw it. And then Eli Apple just kind of slides out from out of nowhere and just smacks that ball away. That was a really good play by him. I got to give him credit when he needs it because he's got a lot of baggage going against him.
I think that Hendrickson and Hubbard are 2 of the most underrated defensive ends in the league. Like, they don't get a lot of talk or publicity. That defense is very underrated. I've anointed my fandom to the Bengals here the last year and a half, so I'm sticking with them. I'm all in on the Bengal train. I call it Burrow Bodkins Bengals, so let's keep it going. But, hey, I'm off the Packers bandwagon, baby, and we'll talk about that game a little bit later, but hey, let's go Bengals, baby. I'm rooting for you.
Yeah, you got to replace that Reggie White with a Joe Burrow back there, man.
You were talking. I've said this before. I said I don't know what jersey I would pick if I won the jersey giveaway. I said I would pick a white Joe Burrow jersey, I guess, because there's not one person. I already have Aaron Rodgers jersey, and there's no other Packer I'd really want. I'd give an Aaron Jones jersey to my wife. She has a crush on him, so that's it.
Hey, you can't blame her, man. That dude is electric when he actually gets the chance to touch the ball 15 times and they don't hold it out of him. But I love those white jerseys. Those white jerseys are fantastic. So that's a great choice. Next week, they play Kansas City in Cincinnati. That's going to be game of the week, right? I mean, there's fewer matchups you can have in the NFL. That was last year's AFC Championship game, which was an absolute banger. Kansas City's probably going to win this week. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a done deal. The Rams are so friggin' destroyed on offense. There's no way that they're going to be able to keep up with Kansas City. And then they get to play Cleveland, Tampa Bay, who looks like crap, New England, end the season against Buffalo and Baltimore. I think this team is definitely a playoff team. I think they're going to win the division. But if they do lose a game or two in between here, maybe to the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City, that Week 18 game against Baltimore, if they can string some wins together, looks like that's going to be for the division winner by the end of the season and maybe a home field advantage in the playoffs. So they got a really interesting schedule coming up moving forward, and I'm definitely interested to see it. I like Cincinnati a lot. I think they're better than Baltimore, in that division, even if they don't find a way to win it and they make a wild card. I think that they'll go further than Baltimore, but they're like you said, they're catching fire at the right time. This offense is fantastic.
And Chase didn't play today, is expected to be back against
Mhm.
Kansas City next week.
They'll need him.
That game, like you said, Ryan, like that's the game of the week. Like that's the hype game. Like everybody's going to want to tune into that game. A matchup of last year's AFC Championship game where the Bengals were down. I mean, what were they down in that game? 10 or so.
It was double digits.
It was able to come back and find a way to win. Joey Burrow, I mean, that kid is absolutely just. I rave about this kid more because he's just an absolute dog. I mean, his swagger, he takes shots after shots again today, and then just gets up and then just does it all over again and just can throw it on a dime to people. Chase is an absolute stud. Mixed with Higgins Higgins, I felt like is done exactly what you wanted your number 2 when your number 1 goes down, and that's step up and be the number 1 guy. And now he can go back to being the great number 2.
Yeah, take advantage of that softer coverage without those top corners on him. I love T. Higgins. He's one of my favorite players in the NFL. Every time I watch him play, he does something huge. To me, Burrow, he just reminds me in terms of play style, he's a modern day Brett Favre, man. He does not care if he turns the ball over. He will go back out there and he will sling it to the same guy in the same coverage again and make sure that time it's a touchdown. I love his play style. Couldn't be happier that he's on the Bengals because they have been putrid for basically my entire life. And now the Bengals are actually going to win some games. So it's nice. You want to preview the night game, man? The big Eagles versus Packers game?
Yeah, we can. It's going to be 38-10 Eagles. So there's my prediction.
I don't want to jinx us because I think that, I do think that we're going to win this game. If you don't know, I cover both these teams for Roto Baller. I have to write about each of their players on offense consistently. So I have to watch all these games. It's going to be a very, very late night for me tonight because I got to wait till the game is over to write about all the Packers offensive players and all the Eagles offensive players. But you guys win this game tonight. You guys got a reason to play, right? You've got the 9 seed on the line. If you win tonight, you move up to 9th seed in the NFC. So, with that said, it's in Philadelphia. Can you break through this defense? Ndamukong Suh said he's already coming for Aaron Rodgers.
They got beef. They got beef. They've had beef all these years. 1 year he stepped on his player, Suh stepped on a offensive lineman. They've damn near fought, I feel like. And it'll be interesting. I hate when people say, oh, you guys win this game, you guys will be the 9th seed. I mean, Ryan, you literally just told me you watch this team. You can't watch anybody who watches this team play by play each week can't convince me that they're a playoff team.
There's two things that they're going to be able to do to succeed against Philadelphia's defense. They have to give the ball to Aaron Jones 30 times because as good as we looked last week against Jonathan Taylor after about that first drive, because we held him to like 30 yards for the rest of the game, we're still not a good run defense. It's been kind of fixed. It's like patching holes in a boat with tape. It's still gonna have problems. But the second thing is if Christian Watson can actually find a way to get over the top against some of our corners. I predict that Darius Slay is going to follow around Allen Lazard for the most part. And then you got James Bradbury. If he can find a way to take the top off of James Bradbury, because he's not the fastest corner in the league, I think you guys got a shot. Because right now, our offense is struggling. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just a time of possession battle that we've been losing, which that's been the case for the past couple of weeks. But for some reason, it's not Hurts's problem, but the run game hasn't been fantastic. Our wide receivers have been kind of nicked up here and there. A.J. Brown rolled his ankle 2 games ago at the start and only caught 1 pass for like 4 yards. And then last week, he doesn't look great. He's got an illness this week. He was still visibly sick when he did his press conference on Friday night. Like, there's just a weird vibe going around Philadelphia right now. I think the defense has the ability to handle the kind of inept Packers offense. But then again, you guys went out and you did a great job against a Dallas defense that's supposedly one of the best in the league.
That was a fluke.
Aaron Rodgers just loves to beat up on the Cowboys. I mean, hey, listen, I love that. I'll buy the guy's jersey if that's all he does is beat the Cowboys.
Sidney Dean once said the great poet Sidney Dean from White Men Can't Jump said, "A sun shines even on a dog's ass." And that's what happened that game. The sun shined on our dog's ass because the Packers absolutely stink. We don't do one thing well. We don't run the ball well. I mean, yes, Aaron Jones, when he does get it going, it's electric. But that offensive line, we talked about it off air. I don't know what's going on with Bakhtiari. He plays one game, sits another game, plays 2 series, off 2 series. He can't figure whatever's wrong. I don't know. I really think it's between the ears at this point. I think it's a mental thing, not a physical thing anymore so much. Their offensive line can't seem to get. Aaron Rodgers got the broken thumb. Receivers are still banged up at times. No Dobbs. Looks like Randall's coming back. Defense is shredded by injuries. Rashawn Gary torn ACL. He was our best pass rusher. Our secondary, which was supposed, this defense was supposed to carry us. And Jair's too busy mouthing at people instead of freaking tackling people and making plays. I mean, our defense gets shredded. We can't stop the run. So look at Miles Sanders and what's the other running back's name that's alluded?
Kenneth Gainwell.
Jalen. My whole life have struggled against mobile quarterbacks. Mike Vick ran for 300 yards on us one year in the playoffs. Kaepernick ran for 500 yards once year in the playoffs. Jalen Hurts will probably rush for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns against us. It is what happens. We struggle against mobile quarterbacks. We have forever. So maybe I don't know what it is, but the Packers will stink. And I told you this. This is exactly what's going to happen. This is all lined out. They're leaking the information to the Aaron Rodgers thumb more and more each day. First there was nothing, right? He was saying it was nothing. It's nothing. Then it was, it's broken. Now it's broken real bad. It's worse than what we believed it to be. So guess what? Now the Eagles will put the final nail in the coffin, even though I said 4 weeks ago, put the final nail in the Packers. When we played the Bills, I had a whole funeral for them. Put the final nail in us. They're going to say, hey, Aaron's done. He can't play anymore the rest of the year because he's going to have surgery on his thumb. Maybe he will, maybe he don't, but they're going to say he has surgery. They're going to play Love the rest of the 5 weeks or so of the season. Let him play. They get a good look at him, whether he's going to be, then you can evaluate, hey, is he going to be the guy after Aaron or not? Or like you said off air, can we trade him for somebody, and get some picks, or maybe trade him for a guy, a player or two, so all those questions will be answered because a lot of people here, and I hear people, they need to trade Aaron. They need to do this. Aaron's done as a pack. First of all, you can't trade him because the hard cap is like 100 and some odd million if you trade him before June 1st. And it's like 95 million after you trade him. Well, guess what? They're not trading him. He made the contract to where he retires as a Packer. That's what's going to happen. The only way Aaron's leaving is if he retires after the year. And I don't think he's going out like this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you're right, because if the Packers were good this year, I had a feeling that at the beginning of the season, Rodgers, this was going to be his last year no matter what. But now, with this thumb injury, there was a report that said he has to have surgery on it at some point. It can hold off, but he's got to have surgery on it to get it fully repaired. Maybe that's some of the reason he looks kind of like dog water this year, because he's throwing interceptions left and right. He doubled his 3 from last year in only like 4 games, I think, this season, which it's very uncharacteristic of him, obviously. And then you've got a revolving door of wide receiver injuries. Every single one of your starting wide receivers, from Alan Lazard to Christian Watson to Watkins to Randall Cobb, they've all been out for extended periods of time this year. Multiple games. So they've got to figure something out. I like the way that you said it, because I think it's definitely something that's going to happen. If they lose tonight, they're playing for everything tonight. This is basically their Super Bowl this year. If they can't win tonight, they're basically out of playoff contention, in my opinion, because they've got some rough games coming up too. Maybe they do shut down Rodgers for the rest of the season. And I think they should, because they need to give Love the chance to go out there and start, more than just doing this spot start stuff where Rodgers misses a game last year because of COVID, or the year before that. I can't remember which.
It was
and then
last
he misses
year.
It was last year. And then he started another game randomly within the last couple of years. Let the guy have some, first team reps for a few weeks in a row, get him out there, see what he can do. I think he's got 2 good weapons in Lazard and Watson to try and make something happen. And then Dobbs will be back in a couple of weeks as well. I think he's on week 3 of his ankle injury, so he's going to be close to a return pretty soon here. That's a decent wide receiver core. You got Tanyan, who I think is a reliable target. If they actually target the poor guy, there's not a more frustrating player to write for fantasy than Robert freaking Tanyan, because I feel like every week a receiver or two goes out and it's like, okay, he's startable because he's going to get a bunch of targets. And then he gets 2 targets because Amari Rodgers, who's not even on the team anymore, gets targeted more than he does randomly for some reason. So, I don't want to say the Eagles are going to win because I'm going to jinx it, but I'm definitely picking Philadelphia to win this game tonight. We got CK Landis saying Lazard is pretty frustrating also. And last week, I'm sure you watched the game, Nick, he and Rodgers just looked out of sync. They looked off the same page. He was having his head down. Rodgers is yelling at him, which that has been the one guy this season who's been consistently targeted by Rodgers. And I think Lazard has looked pretty good. So that was a weird sort of like, I don't know if that was just a game disconnect where one game they have a problem with each other, or if this whole thing is just breaking down entirely because Watson's the one who's caught the 5 touchdowns in the past 2 weeks and Lazard hasn't gotten his share that he wanted. I don't know. Maybe he's being a diva, or maybe this is just something not working out properly.
It's just not working out. I wasn't super high on Lazard in the going into the season. I try to tell everybody that guy had never played 17 games. Everything that's happened with the wide receiver core, I literally told everybody beginning of the year, hey,
yeah, you're right.
I said, this guy's going to miss 4 games. This guy's going to miss 4 games. This guy's going to miss 4 games, because that's what happens, because we didn't have anybody. Christian Watson was already hurt beginning of the year. I said, he fits right in well with our receiver group. I mean, that's just what this team is. I've said that they're zero fun to watch. I've never watched a more frustrating team we haven't been bad a whole lot of times, since I've I guess 9-10 years old out when I really started getting into football and watching it. So for the last 20 plus years, that they just haven't, this is the worst team, and we've had bad years, but it's we're rebuilding, so I understand we're supposed to be bad. This year wasn't supposed to be a full-on rebuild. It's supposed to be a patch type year, maybe. I thought we'd still win the division, but because I was counting on our good defense and the ability to run the ball. Where is AJ Dillon at? Is he on a milk carton? Because I have not seen this guy all season. He's so frustrating. I have to have him on my fantasy team because I have Aaron Jones, right? That's the only reason. He's just taking up a bench spot. I can't play him. At the beginning of the year, I was like, I could probably play both these guys because I figure 15 carries each. He'll have some games. He'll score. He'll get in the. Now if I wasn't the Aaron Jones holder, I would have benched him. I would have cut him a long time ago because I was counting on that. I wasn't counting on Minnesota to be as good as they are. Figured we would win, somewhere around 10 games, get into the playoffs, and then just see what happens. But if we won our division, I would say that's a step in the right progression for next year with the rookie receivers. But man, it is not anything what I thought. It's so frustrating because they don't do anything well. And you just watch each week and I expect them to lose. I've never picked against them more this year than I ever have in my money line, spread, anything. They're just bad. They're bad. They're a bad football team. And eventually it's going to come. Everybody's pointing fingers at Aaron Rodgers, but when they're going to start pointing fingers at Matt LaFleur and the play calling?
That's what I was going to ask. In your opinion, as a Packers fan, because we just talked about AJ Dillon, how last year, especially down the stretch, those two were splitting carries. Him and Jones were splitting carries, and it worked out because Dillon was able to kind of get those grinded out yards, and then Jones was really good in the red zone. What's going on? Is this a play calling issue, do you think, and a coaching issue more than it is just a full on offensive issue and personnel issue? Or do you think this is more on Rodgers kind of, not doing as well as he normally does because he doesn't have an alpha receiver, offensive line's a bit banged up? Because I after watching it, I think the play calling is terrible. They do not do anything to try and help out the quarterback in any way, shape, or form. And you've got a 2-time reigning MVP at quarterback. I get it.
3-time total. He's been MVP 3 times, reigning MVP twice, the last 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, the guy, I get that you lose Adams, and that's a massive loss.
So is Devontae Adams worth what we went 11 games last year? so like in baseball, right? His WAR would be like +10. Like, I mean, is that, and obviously he's not doing that for the Raiders. So the Raiders aren't winning. So it can't just be all Devontae Adams. I think it's a little combination of everything. The play calling's piss poor. You see Aaron yelling at Matt, like, run the effing ball, or what the F are we doing? So I think it's a little bit of that. I think, remember, we did lose our quarterback coach. We did lose our OC. But we brought
Losing
in,
Hackett might be big. I think
yeah,
that's the big thing here. You see it kind of in New England where like they'll lose a couple of coaches to head coaching jobs and stuff like that. Things will kind of break down a little bit over the year or two, and then they get fired and they come right back to Belichick. And then everything's fixed. I mean, Matt Patricia, pencil in the hat, Patricia's calling offense for friggin' New England. And, now it's working. So, like, I don't understand. Maybe that's the big issue, because I know how close him and Hackett were. He came out and said how close they were and how big of a loss it was for them to lose him. You've got Josh Allen this year kind of struggling at times. I know the elbow injury is definitely playing into it, and they're playing that down.
Yeah.
But losing Brian Daboll is big. And I think Dorsey's a good OC. I think he's a good play caller. But Daboll is just, he's taking Daniel Jones and making them look like a potential playoff team, for God's sakes. And Daniel Jones can't throw his way out of a paper bag. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's tough.
I think it's a little bit of everything. You're not seeing the back. I thought we would see a little bit more split backs together in the backfield. We're not seeing that as much. Or you're not seeing Aaron Jones line up at outside as a wide receiver. I thought we'd get a little bit more of that. It's a little bit of, it's all of the above. I think it all starts with the offensive line. The offensive line has been a makeshift. Guys banged up. The guy's not playing well. So that starts it, I feel like. And then it just play calling. We don't stick with the run. Like Aaron Jones will rat off 3 runs for 10 yards, right? And then you're like, he'll pick up 1 run, 10 yards, the next run, 8 yards, the next run, 12 yards or something. Then they'll just like, hey, the next 4 plays, we're going to pass it. Well, why don't you just stick with the run? Like, that was working well. What are we doing? I look back at that Giants game. We need 1 yard. We have a big, a dude they call Quadzilla. Give him the ball to get 1 yard. Like, what? It's like they get too cute at times. Run the damn ball. That's
AJ Dillon is he's a volume back. He's so good, man. And I've never seen a player misused as badly as AJ Dillon has been used this year. Like, if you put him onto Buffalo, because they need a running back. I like Singletary, but he's not a workhorse. You put him on Buffalo. That dude's running for 120 yards every game if they give him the opportunity to do so. Or you put him anywhere that, as even a decent rushing offense, and he's going to be a top 10 back in this league. And right now he's wasting a third year of his career here because, the Packers are bad this year and they're not using him to any length or whatever. I don't know if it's because Jones is getting older. He's almost already 28 years old, I think, or he is 28. Yeah. He's sitting around that. He's got that longer contract. I don't know how many years left on it, but they're going to have to lean on Dillon sooner rather than later, and they're just not doing it.
I think what happened, and I said this 2 years ago, so it wasn't last year before, Aaron Jones was a free agent. I think they really wanted A.J. Dillon and Jamal Williams. They lowballed Aaron Jones, and then he said, yeah, I'll take the deal. And they were like, what? You're going to take this deal? Because he took less money to stay in Green Bay. So they were so shocked that they weren't going to go with this 1-2 punch of Jamal Williams and A.J. Dillon, that the Aaron Jones took this less money. They're like, all right, they went back and he signed the deal. They're like, what? He signed the deal? All right, well, I guess Jamal Williams, see you later. Aaron Jones is going to be our feature guy because he's playing less money. We'll just run him around. And then we'll still use A.J. Dillon later on in his career. I mean, Derrick Henry, if you think about it, didn't get going until later. It seemed like 3 years into the league, you were questioning, what are they doing with Derrick Henry? And now he's getting the rock 30, 40 times a game. I don't know why we're not doing that. I mean, you look at the league itself. They said this year the rushing average is higher than it's been ever in the NFL.
4.8 yards per carry coming into this week. And that is, I mean, if you've got a running back that can hit around 5 yards per carry, you're sitting pretty.
And we got two guys I feel like should be able to do that. Aaron Jones is doing it. A.J. Dillon could do it if he had the more opportunities.
Yeah, and the goal line work doesn't make any sense to me. I know that Jones is good inside the 20, but if I'm on the 2, I'm giving it to A.J. Dillon. That guy can literally push my center with himself and take himself into the end zone. And they're not doing
I don't know if they get too cute and I don't know if they want Aaron if it's Aaron that's like wanting to throw the ball or it's them, but it seems like Aaron's like yelling at Matt to run the ball. Like, let's run the football. Aaron doesn't need to pad his stats where he doesn't need another MVP. What we need to do is win football games and make the playoffs that we're not going to make. So right now, just keep losing. Like, I mean, just lose and keep getting a higher pick. Just lose and then get a higher pick. The Raiders stink, so we'll get their first round pick as well. So that's that.
That's what I keep saying about New Orleans. And right before we're going to wrap up the show, I'll give you a rundown of the scores going on right now. 17-14 Arizona over the Chargers. Chargers are in the red zone. 27-24 Seattle over Las Vegas. That game is well over hitting the over. They just started the third quarter. There's 10 minutes left. Halftime right now for the Chiefs and Rams, 13-3. Looks like the Chiefs are taking it easy on them. Only up by 10 points. That game was
15 and a half. I took the Rams with the points there because it was like 15 and a half.
I would not have done that. I wouldn't have the Stones right now because, I mean, who's at the quarterback? It's not even Wolford, isn't it? Like
Perkins.
Perkins?
Yeah.
Isn't that a coffee? Like, good Lord. And then you've got the Saints down 0-0.
Chiefs don't cover, though. Chiefs don't cover. That's the reason I did it.
I think they'll do it. I think they'll cover this week. If they can't cover this week, they'll never cover.
15 and a half. That's a lot. They're not covering. They're down.
They're up by 10 right now.
Yeah, 10-3. I took the Rams at 15 and a half.
Boy, I really want to bet money on that right now if I could. They do half game parlays, right? They do second half parlays. I might jump on that here in a minute because I don't see how they score any points. I don't even know what the stat line for the Rams is in that game. They've got 16 yards of passing in the first half. Cam Akers is their leader in yards with 32 yards on the ground. No chance. Oh my Lord.
Give it to I got Kyron Williams going in that game, so hopefully he starts 5 attempts for 2 yards.
2 yards.
He does have one target for one reception for 15 yards. So.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, he catch the ball. Let's throw it to him because they've got Ben Skoranek out there as their top receiver. Some dude named Harris has 6 yards. That's their leading receiver. Jacob Harris. I've never heard of him. He's got 6 yards.
I called it the who game because I don't know who the hell is playing for the Rams. I mean, that's literally everybody. I couldn't tell you, like, at least like some of these guys are like, oh yeah, I remember that guy from college, right? Like the guy that's playing for the Texans today, Kyle Allen. I was like, oh yeah, I remember him, But I
played for Carolina for a little bit.
Yeah,
he had a cup of coffee.
Who the hell is this guy playing? Like
that's a great way to end the show right there. Nick, I want to thank you for joining me today, man. Plug all your stuff. I know you got shows going on every single week, so plug away.
Yeah, so just join us tonight about 8:30 Central, 9:30 for you East Coast folk, for our week 12 reaction show. We'll be reacting to all things week 12. I'll probably say a lot of the same stuff that I said today early, and then we give out our dogs and our turds of the week as well. And then we're back on. I'll be with Tanner, Bahoon, and Bodkins on Monday, and then on Wednesday we'll do our week 13 preview show, and then Thursday. Now we moved the weekly wrap up show to Thursday. I put that out on on Thanksgiving. I've been going to the gym 3 days a week, so that had to move the day show. So that's it, man. Like, just you can catch it all here on Let's Talk Sports, my channel, the Bodkins Show on YouTube as well. So, and also anytime Dan asks, I always, on Let's Talk Sports. So that's pretty much it, man. I'm, try to do as much stuff because I love spitting dumb stuff into a microphone and making people laugh like you, Ryan.
Hey, it's not dumb stuff because I can tell you right now, you are 100% right. The Packers are terrible. So you're very smart. You're very smart, man. I appreciate you coming on today. Guys, if you want to check out any of my stuff, just go to my my Twitter. I'm not going to spiel everything because I got too much crap going on. If you want to see anything that I write, follow me at FTP. It's posted there every single time that I write something for whatever of the myriad of websites that I work for. And then I will see you guys. We didn't have the fantasy show this past Thursday because it was Thanksgiving. Matt and I were doing Thanksgiving with my parents, so we didn't have the time to be able to do that. we will be back
you
this
did. You tell your
Thursday.
parents to watch the kids. You could have went down there and done the show. Don't lie, Ryan.
7
Don't lie.
kids is a lot, man. I don't know if my mom can handle so yeah, no, we will be back on Thursday. We'll be doing that show at 5:00 as usual. We've been getting a lot of views on that show, lots of questions, and this is crunch time. We're only 2 more weeks until the fantasy playoffs for most people, 15 through 17. So we're winding down with that. But you guys can join me for that. And of course, I'll be back on next Sunday with some guest. I'm not sure. Dan set up Nick this week because the Eagles and Packers matchup, so he could give his guff to the Packers. Well-deserved guff to the Packers. So I appreciate you coming on, man. Guys, I will see you on Thursday. And thanks for joining us.